let's jump right into it. So one of the first things to note about the Cadimage Door and Window tool is that they make it easy to choose what objects you want to use. So rather than jumping into your door library and choosing the door that suits the situation that you're in, picking from one of these, a lot of different windows and doors. This is the New Zealand library, but you probably have a lot in whichever version you're looking at as well. The way that we simplify the process is we just have one object, so nice and easy, and then you can modify this object to look exactly the way that you want it to. So this is the Cadimage door and the garage door, and then if you want to choose a window, it's the same thing, just the one window object. I'll just reset that one. So we've got Cadimage window, so I'll just, first off, I'll roughly look through the settings for the window and the way that you work with the interface. We'll look at the doors briefly after that, although they're very similar to the way that windows work. Once we've looked through those two, we'll look at creating a schedule, and then we'll finish up by attaching notes to our doors and windows to show in the schedules as well. All right, so the window tool, where most people start off, is the glazing panels page here. We'll look at that in a second, but I'll just start with shape. So this is the page where you set up the shape of your window, and this is what lets you create a window that normally you would have to choose one of a selection of 30 or so to get up and running with. So, excuse me, at the moment you can see that we've got just a fairly basic rectangular window. It's got a flat head and a flat sill. You can see we've got our set out over here, which lets us set up the dimensions for various bits of the window. So if I come over here and I change it to, let's go with cut corners, you'll see it updates immediately in our 3D. And you can see we've got some settings for the way we want that to look now. So A and B are to set the horizontal distance of the angles, and C and D are to set the vertical distance. You can do them separately for each side, obviously. And using these different options, you can create quite a huge variety of different window shapes. You can set it to a angled top and then specify the angle or the distance that you want to use. You can make an arch top or various other kinds of curvy topped ones, and there's also a step option which lets us enter a couple of heights to make a stepped window. We're just going to stick with flat for now, just for simplicity. Actually no, let's go with an angle on the top. 14 degrees, that looks good to me. Over to the right here we can also see we've got our settings for if we want to have a top panel, and if we've got any, not the top panel, but a kind of an upper panel or lower panel, we can set the heights of those as well. I'm going to set a 400 top panel. Obviously you can't see anything until I enter a value there. Having a 0 top panel won't show anything. So now that I've put 400 in, you can see that there. Now to set the overall width and height of the window itself, you do those just in the normal preview and positioning controls here, which are also the controls that you'll see in your info box here. So I'm going to set that to about that big. Yeah, that looks okay. Actually, no, I'll make that a little smaller. All right, so that's the shape. So there's also some settings here which we can go into later if anybody wants to see them, but you can set up repeating units and that sort of thing. But let's look at the glazing setting. This is where the action is. So as you can see, we've got a little preview of our window. we're looking at it from the outside, but my placement is showing from the inside, so it looks different there, but they are the same. So you've got our angled top there, and you can see there's a top panel. If I click on that, you can see it changes to green here to show that that's selected now. So it's a we use the technical term a clickable interface, but it probably has a better name than that. And so the way that you work with the glazing tab is just by clicking in here and doing various operations to the panel that you have selected. So at the moment we've got the main panel selected, so I'm just going to hit this plus button here, and what that's going to do is add a second pane here. I'll add another one, so we've got 3 now. And now if I choose one of those, they were all created identical because the plus button, what that's actually doing is duplicating the thing you have selected currently. So they're all the same. You can see down at the bottom here we've got a panel width setting. Now they'll all default to 0 width. And when they're all 0, what the tool will do with that is it will just make them all evenly sized. But what we can do here is we can come in and we can specify that we want one of them to be a certain width, and that will force that to have that width, and then the other 2, or the other how many you have, because they're both set to 0, they will just share the remaining space. So you can have a mixture of automatically sized and manually sized panels in there. And then when we have that selected, we can come over here and choose what kind of pane we want to have there. So everything defaults to fixed pane, but we've got a lot of different options here, as you can see, and then we scroll down and there's some more below there as well. So for this one, I'm just going to go with a, let's say a left hung. This one here can be a awning, and let's make this one here a door. Okay, so as you can see in our 3D view, we've now got our our dashed lines on them showing the way that they open, and you can see there's a door down there, so it's just showing the wood panel there. Now I'm going to select my top panel here. I'm going to leave that as a fixed pane, but I'm going to make it form a grid of, well, it's not really a grid because it's just going to be one row, but I'll make, let's say, 4 columns, and so that automatically chops it up nicely into 4 panels up the top there. We've also got some settings about a ventilation strip and the opening direction. I'll just leave those for now. And you can also set what material you want the glass and the pane to use. So we're using Clearfast, which is just in the standard template as our default there, but you can set it to whatever you like. If you've got different glass types, you can use those. And just before I jump out of here, obviously, the other controls that you have is minus. You can use that to delete panels. So if you had an extra one that you don't want, so we've got 2 doors now, you just select it and delete it. It's pretty straightforward. And then we've also got options to kind of shuffle the panels around, so you can select one and move it across or back to where it came from there as well. And there's a couple of other ways to choose how you want the selection to work as well. It usually is click to select, but you can click to deselect, you can select all, and you can also zoom in and out, and once you're zoomed in and out you can pan and fit in window using those controls there as well. So that's the glazing settings there. As you can see, we've got a kind of a weird looking window going on there. So let's have a look at glazing bars just quickly. Obviously we can't use glazing bars for that door, so let's choose an actual window. So we can come in here and we can choose a type of glazing bar that we want to apply, and it will apply that to whatever we have selected here. I'm just going to go with none for now because I don't really want glazing bars, but as you can see there's a couple of options there, and then once you choose one you've got some settings for the spacings and whatnot there. Then we've got door type and door leaf. So this is if you actually have a door in your window. If you don't have any doors in your windows, then these settings here will do nothing. So there's a set to a single swing, which I'll change to a double. And then there's some settings for the way you want your door leaf to look. So I'm just going to make mine like that. So you can see it chops out the holes there. My door's a little small, so it looks funny. And you've got material settings there for that door leaf as well. Further down, I'm not going to go through all of the settings pages here because there's a lot of them, but we've got settings for leaf panels and glazing bars inside the glass on the door panels if you want those. Hardware settings so that you can set up handles and things. I'll look into that more when we look at doors. And then you've also got settings for the frame as well, so you can set dimensions for each part of the frame there. So this is kind of the frame overview, and then there's detailed settings for each frame element, so you can see the different measurements on all of the bits here. And then you've got your material settings there as well. So there's a lot of control over the various parts of your window that you can set here. There's some shim space settings there as well, and then we've also got settings for glass. It will default to single glazing, but you can click on here and choose double or triple glazing, and when you do it, it will add 3 pieces of glass instead of just one, and you've got some settings for the spacing and the thickness of the glass there. And again, you can change the what's it called? Not the material, the surface, sorry, of the glass that you have placed there. I'm going to change that back to single. Then we've got some settings for exterior trims. So you can have head and jamb moldings there, and you can. This is where you place your sills as well. So I can come in here and choose a sill. And once you turn on that setting, you'll see the sill apply, and you get some settings about your sill to size it and to choose the surface you want for it. There's some interior trim settings as well, not as many as exterior, but still should be able to cover off pretty much anything you want to do. Attributes is just a list of all the attributes, so we've got a sort of a one-stop shop for all of the attributes on your window. If that's all you want to change, that's the place to go. And then we've got some display options as well. So I won't dive into all of those, but you can see we've got different ways of showing the opening arrow, different ways of showing the door opening and things like that. And then there's some schedule settings as well, which we'll look at when we look at the schedule later. You can enter a U value in here if you're using energy evaluation as well. Or calculate that based on, and your energy evaluation will pick that up. And then the last thing is just everything, if you want to get through that. So that's our window. I'm pretty happy with that. So just the same as with any window at all, click OK. Click once to choose the position that you want it in, and then again click on either side and direction to choose how you want it to be placed in the wall. So click again, and then let's go and see it. And I've inadvertently placed it in a spot where I had some interesting walls going on. Let's just drop that down a little. Goodness, I should have looked at my walls in this model before I did anything. Right, so as you can see, it's looking the way that it did in my preview on the glazing tab. So we've got our door here, our 2 windows that open from various directions, and then our angled top, which was separated into that grid of 1x4. And so at any point now you can jump back in and change any of those settings that you want to as well. Obviously you can move it around in 3D and 2D like you would with anything else. And basically the idea is once you've got a basic understanding of how the object works, you can jump into some of these more crazily detailed sections should you want to change any of those settings. And then when you're done, just save off favorites of all of the things that you want to go with. So that's the window. The door tool works very similarly, so let's just have a look at that. So just go to Cadimage Library 20, Cadimage Door. So again, same as with the window, we've got a shape setting. You can't set the shape of the sill for the door, it's always flat, but the head shape you can set to roughly the same sorts of things as you can with the door. So you can have an angled top like you could with the door, and the same with most of the others here. Cut corners, gable, different types of arcs, and a rounded option as well. I'm just going to go with flat for now. And we've also got some settings in here for the dimensions of overlights and sidelights and things like that. So we could set an overlight there and it'll pop that in, and then maybe I'll put in a sidelight. And we'll see the controls for the way those look in a little bit, but all you need to do is put in the values there to choose where you want them to show up, and they will do. Let's put in a B there. There we go. So again, it's this is where you set what you would normally choose a entire door object for. Is for setting the shape here, and then also for the amount of doors as well. So once you go to door type, you can see it's divided into two sections. One is the left and one is the right. At the moment it's set to a single swing, but we've got a couple of different door options here that you can choose from. So you could say a bifold, that the leaf width is 810, and we want to say we've got 2 leaves. And so you see we now have 2 leaves, and it's extended the width of the door so that it accounts for the 2 leaves of the bifold plus our side light. You can also set a pivot offset there, and the various door types have different settings for things depending on what you're using. If you have sliders, you can set the overlaps and that sort of thing. You can also click this button, sorry, not button, this tick box here saying different door type left and right, and once you do that it'll let you specify a different door type on the right if you want to. I'm just going to leave that for now because I'm just going to have a bifold opening from the left, but if you enter a number of leaves in here they'll turn up there to be identical, or you can set them differently using that tick box that we had just before. Then we've got glazing panels. So this looks very overwhelming, but it's just the different dimensions for each of these measurements inside of the glazing panels that go around your door. So at the moment it's set to corner lights, and you can see at the moment we've got our overlight, our side light, and there's a corner light there, but we can come in here and change that to say no jams to take those away, or you could, it was already full width, sorry. Could change it to work that way around, and once you've made those changes then you can set the values for the sizes of frames and that sort of thing using these settings down here. And then you've also got some options over here to choose the material as well. Let's just leave it at that one. You can also set panels, so this is very similar to what we had in the window tool proper. So the side light panel is set to a fixed pane, but you could make it another door even if you wanted, or any number of other things like that. And the same with the right side light, and then if you come into here you can also do it with the overlight as well, to set it up the way that you want it to look. And you can apply glazing bars as well, the same as you could in the window tool. Door leaf settings, they're roughly the same as what we saw before. You can choose what you want the door leaf to look like. In these dialogues here, the darker tealish colour means a panel and the lighter means glass. So if I choose this one, you'll see the top two are glass, the bottom's a panel. If I choose that, it's top one's glass and the bottom two are panels. Got some more surface settings over there, and then you can set what you want the panels to be as well, so we can make those a nice beveled panel. It's hard to see against that surface, or TNG or something like that. We've also got the hardware settings in here. So this is the overview of the hardware, and if you click on the little dots here it will take you to the full settings. So at the moment the exterior handle is set to nothing. Let's change it to a D-pull. with a rectangular plate, and you can see that there's various settings for the dimensions of the handle and of the plate, and also the surfaces and the way that they're placed. And you can also do interior handles as well. So let's do the same on the interior. And you can see in my 3D model here that it's placed those on, and you can add kick plates here as well if you want them. The frame settings look very similar to the ones in the window tool, so not much to see there. Glass settings are exactly the same as in the window tool, and then we can add exterior trims, so we could put a head molding on and a sill as well. There we go. Interior trim is the same as before, and then the display options are very similar as well, so you can choose the way it shows in your 2D and 3D and the way you want the wall openings to work and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of control again in here for the way you want it to look. And then finally there's some reveal settings here as well, which you can modify if you want to customize those. So again, there's a lot of things to look at in there, which I'm not going to go through all of them because it's just very overwhelming, but basically set up things the way that you want, dive into the advanced settings of any further control that you need, and then save off favorites of everything that you're after. Again, the placement is very similar to the Windows, and it's exactly the same as the way that Archicad works. So those are the doors and the Windows objects. The garage door is also very similar. So there's probably not a lot of reason to look at it. Most people don't use them very often anyway, but the settings are very similar, except that the door leaf setting lets you set the way you want the sectional panel to work and that sort of thing. But it's very similar otherwise. Once you know how to work the window or the door, you know how to use all of the other parts of the window and door tool pretty much. So the next thing about the window and door tool is the schedule. So we have our own schedule separate to Archicad's interactive scheduler, which you get to by going to Cadimage Doors+Windows Schedule Manager. At the moment we've got no schedules, so I'm going to make a new one. Give it a name, not very creative I know, and then we can set the settings of what we want it to schedule. So at the moment it's set to show doors and windows. You can filter it by element ID if you want to, so you can come in here and say that you only want doors or windows where the element ID starts with INT or something like that to schedule only your interior doors, that sort of thing. You can also filter by layer combo and by renovation status if you wanted, and by story. And then there's also some settings to collate doors that match up, doors or windows, sorry, that match up. So if you have a lot of exactly the same door, you can choose the collate option, and that will stick them all into one and just list them underneath the schedule item. And you can also get it to isolate depending on different things. So if you chose to isolate by material and you had two identical windows, one was pink and one was yellow, it would, if you had isolate turned on, it would show them separately in the schedule anyway, even though they're the same apart from the surface. There's also some settings for the layout sheet that you want it to go on to. So this will automatically size it to the size of paper that you want it to go on, and this is just a list of the masters that you have. There's some settings for the dimensions that you want to show on them. So the defaults are these four here, but you can also turn on the rough opening, or you can change them to however you want, and you can also change the way your dimensions are placed. And then there's label settings as well. So this just affects pretty much the font formatting of the labels that are applied. And then you've got your layer setting at the bottom here. So once we click OK, it'll say that some of the schedules that were created have been updated, and this one's brand new obviously, so it does need updating. So we're just going to say yes on that. And it makes a new worksheet called whatever your schedule is called and builds the schedule. So let's go and have a look at that. Schedule 1. All right, so you can see when I zoom out, you you can see that there's a little border around here which is the size of the paper that we've told it we want to use, and so it's going to make sure that everything fits inside that. If everything doesn't fit, then it's going to overflow them to a second one which will be next to it, so that you can easily place multiple drawings, the one drawing, and crop it to fit on multiple layouts. So you can see we've got the ID showing for each element and the dimensions of them, and it shows an accurate elevation view of each of the doors and windows that it has scheduled. And if we make changes to any of those, you can just click on the Cadimage menu, Doors and Windows, and press Update Schedule, and it'll update all of those previews and dimensions and everything to account for that as well. Now the last thing that I want to look at is the schedule notes, which we get to using the schedule notes palette. So at the moment there's no notes of any kind on these, it's just listing the ID, but you probably want to put some info on these, so there's a couple of ways you can do it. The easiest way is to tick the live edit box here and just select the thing that you want to apply a note to and type it in. So we've got a note called "This is a door" now. And as soon as I deselect out of this box here, it adds the note "This is a door" to that door. And you can do the same with any element in the schedule. And it applies them there. So what we've done at this stage is we've made a note just in this schedule and it's applied it to just that door and just that window. So those are just tied to the schedule and they won't turn up anywhere else in the project at all. If you want them to do that, then you can choose Cadimage menu again and press this button here that says Save Notes to Model. And now if I go back to my floor plan and I find D001, I haven't used that for a while. There we go. There it is. And if I have a look in the Cadimage Schedule Notes section of my settings here, you can see it now has the custom note, "This is a door." And I can add some more in here. So I can say, sorry, that didn't work because I haven't got any notes. So in my schedule notes setting here, you can see there's this button here to show the schedule notes manager, and that'll pop this out. You can import notes if you have a database of notes that you made already. I don't have one of those, but you can import and export using these buttons here. I'm just going to make a new note here. And then if I select that door again and do it properly now, I can press Add, and I can add in notes from my note manager there as well. And if I jump back to the schedule and update it, it's coming, and update it, then you can see it's picked up that note that I added to the door in the ground floor. So you can go through and make up a bunch of notes in your note manager that you use in any projects that you have. So this is very similar to if you've used or seen our Keynotes tool at all. This works in a very similar way to the Keynotes tool. So you can set up a bunch of notes that you can export to use in any project, and then you just apply those notes to the windows and doors that you want to. You can do that in your schedules and then press the button to save notes to model, or you can do it directly in your model and have them show up in the schedule. All right, so that's the whirlwind tour of the tool. That's our half hour up, so if you only had half an hour available, thank you for attending. If you do still have some time and you have some questions, then pop them into the question panel and I will have a look at those. I'm just going to turn off the screen share just for a second so that I can check on those questions, and then I'll answer any that I have time to now. All right, so someone says, will the Cadimage system upgrade with the new version of Archicad, or do you have to buy it again every year? So it's a subscription system, so you pay for it monthly, or you can pay annually in advance, but basically so long as you're subscribed to it, you have the latest version of it, is how that works. So yeah, if you had bought it before we changed to subscription, then you do need to upgrade it every year. But subscriptions have been around for a couple of years now, so I'm not sure how many of you there are left not using that system. But yeah, so if you had bought it before, yes, you do need to upgrade. If you've bought it recently, then no, you just keep your subscription going and you're fine. Again, with the subscription pricing, so the fixed cost per month is for one license of it. It could be used on multiple computers, so you could use it on one and then deactivate from that one and use it on a different computer, but you can't use it at the same time on two different computers. It's activated against your key plug number, so if you use, say, a code meter key on one computer and then you shift to another computer but you use the same code meter, it'll work fine on that second computer without you having to do anything at all. If you do want to shuffle it to a different code meter key though, or soft license or whatever you're using, then you'll need to contact our support team and get them to force a deactivation of that so you can use it on a different workstation. All right, the garage door tool. Yes, it does have options to do with the way that it rolls and lifts and the sections. Let me just quickly show you the garage door tool while we're here. Might as well see how it looks. So, oops, I have a door selected. So you've got settings in here for the shape, same as before, and the type. So it's set to roller by default, but you can also do a tilt panel or a sectional lift, which should give you, should cover off pretty much all of the types of garage doors I can think of at least. And then once you go into door leaf, you'll see the settings here will let you change the way you want the panels and things to look. Glazing, if you have glazing on it, and the trims that go around it as well. So that should, I think, cover off most of the ways of doing garage doors. But if you have specific things that you want to do with it that you can't do using that, then by all means get in touch with us and we'll see if we can do them. So that's garage doors. Turn off door hardware. So in terms of turning off the view of things in different Archicad views, we use the model view options for those, which you're probably used to some extent already. So if you go to, where do they hide? Here, you've got the settings about hide furniture knobs in 3D and door handles and knobs. Our tool listens to that setting there as well. So if you create a view where the hide door handles option is turned on, then the handles won't show up on the Cadimage door and window objects there either. All right. Door frame options. Yes, it does have some different frame options. Oh, what setting am I thinking of? forget where the setting is for that. Sorry, Esteban. I'll get back to you after this session to get some more detail on those frame settings you're asking about there. Door and windows showing up in the normal Archicad schedule. Yes, they show up in the normal Archicad interactive schedule because they are just doors and windows. So if you already use the Archicad door and window schedule, you don't have to change to use ours. Ours has just been around for a while and it does things a little bit differently. So a lot of people like the way that it works. And if it works the other way around as well. So normal Archicad doors and windows will show up in our schedule as well if you want them to. So you can go either way. Question about the dimensioning to the story in the schedule. You can set the setting for how you want that to display in the actual schedule elements themselves. So you can set them to only dimension to whatever you want them to dimension to. They don't have to have a massive sill height or anything. Is there a telescopic door type for a lift? I'm not sure how that would need to look. There's a couple of slider types, but I'm not sure that any of them would do exactly what you'd need it to for a lift door. I'll get in touch with you after this and just see if I can find out specifically how it would need to look for a lift. But I'm pretty sure we could make something there work. And if not, then maybe we can look at either adding it in future or finding something else that does do that. Thanks for that. That's a good one. I'm going to have to cut this short in a little bit because there's a lot of questions still. If you have an Archicad subscription, the Archicad subscription, if you're a New Zealand Archicad subscriber, then the Cadimage tools are part of that. They're free to New Zealand customers. But if you're outside of New Zealand, then it's not included as part of your Archicad subscription. So that would need to be purchased separately. The way that you get the Cadimage tools, which I probably should have covered in the first place, is you just go to our website, cadimage.com, and if you want to get a trial version, you can go to cadimage.com/trial, I think it is, and I'll include a link to that in the follow-up email, which has the recording of this, but that will let you get a 30-day trial of any of the tools that you want. So that should get you up and running regardless of where you are. But yes, if you have an Archicad subscription but you're not in New Zealand, then that's a separate subscription price. It's not included in Archicad. All right, what else have we got here? The manual updating of the schedule and model. Not quite sure what that question means. I'll get back to you, Ben, about that question. What happens if you stop subscribing to the product? What will happen is that you won't be able to edit the doors and windows anymore, but they'll still all show exactly where they were. Your schedules will still be there. You just can't change them anymore. You won't be able to update the schedule anymore and that sort of thing. But everything will still look exactly the same as it did while you were subscribed. You just can't change them anymore after that. How does it handle bigger projects with a lot of windows? It mostly handles them fine. The reason that it's lagging for me a bit is because my computer is rather elderly and it's mostly optimized for being light and portable and not for running Archicad particularly well. So in most cases, I have seen it get a bit slow, but it doesn't get noticeably more slow than anything else that you would do in Archicad, generating a section and that sort of thing. So I would say that it works fine for large models, yep. Selected number. Okay, someone's saying, could the schedules be built with a table automatically updating from the object's metadata. That sounds interesting. It can't, no, but that does sound interesting. I'd like to find out more about what you mean there, because that sounds, yeah, kind of cool. When collating identical doors, does the schedule list all applicable door numbers? Yes, it does. So when you have identical doors and windows that are collated in the schedule, they will appear, I might have some in here, they'll appear listed and separated with commas. Those two look pretty similar. Let's see if those will schedule together. So I'll just update this schedule. So here you can see DO002 and 003 are the same, although 003 is the opposite orientation. So it's been collated because I told it not to isolate based on orientation, but it has made a note of that. So you can see there it lists it like that. If we had any that were actually identical, they would just show with a list. Here we go, so you can see them here. So item as shown, F03, G01 and G11, that's how it will list identical things in a collated schedule, just like that. And then the same again for the handed items as well.